Welcome to Chapter 11, Musical Emotion. So, I've attached a couple of YouTube videos that I feel are really important for you to watch. The first one is an MRI of a French horn player, and it's really interesting to see the tongue of a musician and what all goes into the muscles of a musician. And again, now this is an MRI machine, and I wasn't sure when it was recorded, so the sound is a little off, but you can tell what's happening in the video. The second one is done by a local news about a violinist who suffered with tremors and had brain surgery in order to fix that. And it doesn't show the brain, so don't so you don't have to be grossed out. But it does show the operating room and what they did in the procedure. And the last one kind of goes back to the beginning of the class, where this TED Talk, Michael Thomas, discusses musical meaning across time, and it's actually really interesting to hear his thoughts and perspectives on those topics. So, as we get to music and emotion, I want you to remember that each individual person, has an individual capacity for the perception and cognition of and responsiveness to music. Now, again, meaning that each person may have a different response to music. And this profile is made up of a mixture of biological, psychological, and sociocultural aspects. What we may feel is happy music may not be to other cultures. Um, Again, music in our DNA does discuss or does implement that we are musical human beings. However, music itself may have different meaning to different people in different places and times. So there are three different viewpoints that are discussed in this chapter. One is the cognitivist, the other is a emotivist, and then the last one is the aesthetic trinity theory. Now, a cognitivist believes that the listeners can perceive an emotion being expressed in the music without necessarily experiencing that emotion. Meaning, you may understand that this piece is sad, but you actually don't feel sad. And vice versa. This may sound happy to you, but yet you actually don't feel happy. An emotivist believes that the listener can and do actually experience specific emotions induced by the music. So, if the music is happy, you're actually happy. If the music is sad, you actually feel sad. And aesthetic trinity theory is a little different in that the responses to music involve all being moved and thrills. And we'll get a little bit into that more later on in the chapter. But again, this is talking about bodily responses to music and how some type of music, it moves us. It gives us those chills and goosebumps. So, to understand music and emotion, we need to understand the biological process of emotions in general. So, the autonomic nervous system contains sympathetic division, and this is your fight or flight kind of part of the autonomic nervous system. And then there's the parasympathetic division, which is the part of the body that conserves energy. Now, going back to the sympathetic, energizes the body by speeding up the heart rate, stimulating secretion of adrenaline and neurotransmitters. Now, again, when we ex- um, exhibit like emotions, whether it's happy or sad, we can measure these things by looking at the sympathetic division, looking at the heart rate, looking at the secretion of adrenaline. Now, the parasympathetic, it talks about the slows down of the heart rate and stimulates digestion, while also secretion of saliva. Again, this is the part of the body that also of the autonomic nervous system that talks about, how our body does conserve energy, how, we need to slow down our heart rate, we need to stimulate our digestion. So the reticular activating system, the RAS, is located in the brainstem. It receives input from all sensory organs. It acts as a filtering device. Weak signals are ignored. And strong signals are sent to the brain for further analysis. Now, taking this, and then we'll connect it later about things that maybe are new to us or something that's surprising. Those signals are something that's sent to the brain for further analysis. Now, so let's talking about the weak signals are ignored. The example is a person who is used to wearing glasses. In this chapter, we'll talk about how listening to your favorite song or listening to a song is very passive versus maybe something new. Signals to strongs are sent to the brain for further analysis. Think about, maybe when you touch a hot stove, those things are are pretty strong signals that, something is happening and something needs to be changed or something needs to be processed. So when, and we'll talk about this later, but when something is new, our brain needs to process it and to understand what's happening. And again, that goes into emotions. So looking at the limbic system, the thalamus, it deals with the arousal and activation of the association areas of the cortex, remembering that we're talking about continuing on with the hypothalamus, which regulates the body system, your body temperature, your body weight, and blood pressure. Your pituitary, it's critical in the endocrine system. It produces the hormones and controlling the bodily functions. Your amygdala, aggressive behaviors and fear reactions. Your hippocampus, which is for your memory storage. Now, again, take all of these and then realize that because these hormones are taking place here, and with these hormonal reactions, with all of these taking place, this is what involves emotion in the human body. This has nothing to do with music yet. This is clearly just dealing with emotions. Now, a good video just to get a great overview of music and emotion is this video. He may be a little hard to understand, but yet he does make some great points, and definitely a video worth watching. So, when we're talking about the role of expectation in musical emotion, again, that's just like it sounds. The expectations that we have in music create our music and emotion. So, one musical event that causes the listener to expect another musical event is tension and release. So, listen to this video and I'll kind of guide you through it. So, listen to the very first word that he says, freezing. Now, when you listen to the word freezing, your body naturally wants the singer to resolve that note. If he was just to say on that first note that he was singing, it would really agitate us. But notice that when he resolves this note, or when he goes to the next note and then starts singing the rest of the phrase, that our body kind of relaxes again. So listen to the next phrase. And you can listen to the rest if you want to, but of course we got to have some Pearl Jam in our life. So this is still, it happens in all types of music, whether it's classical, whether it's rock, whether it's heavy metal, whatever. Musicians and composers create things in their compositions that intrigue our brains, that makes us react in certain ways. So, again, as humans, we constantly generate expectations about upcoming events and future actions. Talking about this song from Pearl Jam, at the very beginning when he starts singing, we know that he's going to complete that phrase or complete the rest of the lyrics, as you say. We generate those expectations. If he never finished that, then something really would have gone off in our brain. All right, so keep on going. The expectancies are largely unconscious. Again, we're not thinking about it every time we're listening to Pearl Jam or any type of music that, oh, thank goodness they resolved that. Or thank goodness, they kept on going and they just didn't end in the middle of a sentence. Most of these things are unconscious. We don't realize that they're happening. Expectancies are usually in the form of schemata. Any disruption to our ongoing expectancies is called biological arousals. Biological arousal is called a search for an explanation. And biological arousals and the search for cognitive meaning combine to create an emotional response. So anything that we don't understand or anything that doesn't happen that we didn't expect, it causes our body to be aroused. And when this happens, our body wants to search for an explanation. Why did this happen? And these two things, the biological arousal and the search for the meaning behind the arousal, create the emotional response. Now, Huron developed what we call the ITPRA theory of expectation. So, in each of these, it's kind of like when we're listening to music. Now, not all of these happen, but maybe when we're listening to a new piece of music, it does. So, the first one for the ITPRA theory of expectation is the imagination response. It occurs when we anticipate the outcome. We know that the Pearl Jam song, that he was going to finish it out because maybe we've already heard it before, right? The tension response is when our body mentally prepares for an anticipated outcome. Again, although we're subconsciously thinking about it, is when he starts singing that first note or that first word, we know that our body is preparing for the event, that what's going to happen next, which goes into the prediction response with how are we concerned with the expectation, what is going to happen. Now, the reaction response is not a thoughtful response, but rather an immediate knee-jerking reaction. Now, this is when you're listening to something new. Maybe he just let's just say that in this Pearl Jam piece that he stops in the middle of the phrase and continues on with maybe an instrumental solo, or maybe just stops the piece. Um, these are type of immediate reaction response, knee-jerking reactions. And then finally, the appraisal response, after the reaction responses were engaged in conscious processing. So again, after something happens, the very last thing is the appraisal response, where we want to think of what happened. We want to process what has happened. Now, when we talk about research, measuring musical emotions, it's really challenging for researchers. There's always problems within the research design. And that's always a limitation of their studies. Psychologists usually study emotion by three approaches. One is a self-report, one is expressive behaviors, and the other is by looking at bodily responses. Now, with any of these researches, it's not ever perfect. You can't ever say, oh, I can conclude from this study that all people will experience sadness by listening to this piece because their bodily responses were this. Again, with just a couple of people in their study. Now, one way to measure musical emotions was developed by a method developed by Kate Hefner. Developed an adjective checklist. Now, the 66 adjectives she used were used to describe music. And as you can see in this picture, you can see all the 66 different adjectives that she used. So maybe spiritual, dreamy, yielding, tender. It was lyrical. It was humorous. It was exhilarating. It was robust. Those are types of adjectives that we would use to describe music. Or have her participants use to describe music. Now, this is kind of a short video of how Hefner used her adjectives in the circle. They call it the adjective circle. But how Kate Hefner used in her research. So it's very interesting. Hope you watch it. Now, Manfred Clynes invented a non-verbal means to measure emotional responses to music. He used a sentograph. Now, participants pushed a button. Now, this is really interesting. Now, I'll let you a YouTube video to look at. And basically, how someone pushed a button tells the researcher the emotion that you are feeling. Maybe if you push it really hard, you're angry. Or if you push it really softly, it's beautiful. Or and again, this YouTube video kind of goes over, without giving musical examples, how Manfred would use to describe, or how he would have patients or participants use to describe music and emotion, which is really interesting to watch. Now, again, as you can see, there's probably numerous problems with these two studies. And that's what happens in every type of study when dealing with music and emotion, that it's not 100% proof. So it's an interesting video to watch. Also, if you ever get a chance, watch a YouTube video of him giving a lecture. Very interesting man. So, going back, reviewing what cognitivists believe and emotivists, cognitivists believe that listeners can perceive emotions expressed in music without necessarily feeling those emotions. A person can recognize that a piece of music portrays a happy feeling without actually feeling happy. An emotivist believes a listener actually feels real emotions. To me, and I also agree with the book, that both of these positions are possible. That sometimes we come from the cognitivist point of view where, yeah, we know this song is happy, but yet we don't feel happy. Or we don't feel sad when the music is sad. But then sometimes in our life we do, when we're listening to music, we really do feel happy when we listen to certain types of music, or if it's for the first time, or if it's for the 100th time. And there's always maybe there's that one piece of music that always makes you happy, or it always makes you sad. Probably because, maybe there was something in the past that was involved with that, and again, numerous examples can be given. My mother is every Sunday she goes to church, and listening to church music and singing just makes her happy, and to have this joyful experience with her. Now, my sister, she may go to a concert, but yet it may be playing a sad song, but yet she not necessarily feels sad. Yet she may be happy because, who knows, the environment. Maybe she's having a drink, maybe she's just out with friends. But yet the song being played is sad. She still may not be. She may not actually feel sad. She may feel delighted or moved, and so it's really interesting on both takes. And just realize that both positions are possible. I give great examples, don't I? All right, now the last one is the aesthetic trinity theory. The profound responses to music involve the awe, the being moved, and thrills. Now, awe is when we talk about we were moved, we were touched, we experienced thrills or chills. Now, you've ever watched a video of someone who does a selfless act of generosity for someone. And so think about that. Those are type of the aesthetic trinity theory responses. When we are completely moved by something, it may make us just warm inside. It may make us cry. We may, again, observe selfless acts. And again, this happens in music as well. Going back to this, Maurice Sendak, back in maybe 2007 or 8, gave an NPR meeting or a discussion, and he talked about going to hear Mahler after 9/11, and that in the middle of Mahler, and during one of the movements, he just began to cry. And but again, and he was like, I've heard it so many times, but yet this time, I just felt that people came together for one reason, and for and again, he wasn't sure if 9/11 had something to do with that, or if it was just the room itself or the performance itself. Now, this is something that's actually not in your textbook, but I feel it is crucial that everyone knows in their life. Now, it's a long name, but from what I've been told numerous times, it's pronounced Csikszentmihalyi, and he developed this term flow. If you're a psychology major, you've probably heard of Csikszentmihalyi. He's a psychologist and researcher, and he talks about being in a state of flow, being in a state of optimal experiences. And I love this quote that he used. The best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limit in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. Now, when we're in a state of flow, there are numerous examples of it. Of course, musicians experience it. Of course, listeners experience it. But they've also done research to say people who are in sports or athletics, they experience flow. Even playing video games or even reading, we can experience flow. Now, when are you in a state of flow? It's when you have a loss of reflective self-consciousness. There's a distortion of temporal experience. So, example, have you ever played a video game, or have you ever read, or been in playing music, or in the practice room, and you did not realize that 45 minutes has passed? This is state of flow, when you don't realize that so much time has passed because you are so involved in some type of activity. Experiences of the activity are intrinsically motivating, they're rewarding. And it's important to realize that the level of ability and the level of interest are, or the level of difficulty, I should say, and the level of interest are equal. When you're in the state of flow, something is not too difficult that it just frustrates you, or it's too easy to where you're just going through the task, but yet, time probably would move slowly. Again, in the state of flow, you experience things that are very intrinsically rewarding to you as a person. Really interesting thought. Last, we'll talk about Sloboda. In 2010, he talks about just everyday musical experiences for listening to music. So basically, are of low intensity, routine, musical experiences that occur more commonly. Maybe just riding in the car. You have it on just because it's noise. Or you're walking to class and you're listening into your iPod headphones. These are just routine things that you're not consciously thinking about all the time. You may not remember what you listened to in the car this morning, because it's unmemorable. It's on average. It's something that you do every day. It's a series of brief music experiences. And again, this is what I talked about a second ago, was like driving to school, shopping in a store. You don't realize what's going on at the Kroger when you're shopping, right? Or the Target, or even when you're dining out. Now, you might sometimes, but for the majority of the time, you don't realize what's going on, musical-wise. So, I'm going to stop there for the end of Chapter 11, Musical Emotion. Again, so much information is given in this chapter. And again, this tutorial just briefly overviews the chapter. Again, maybe this is something that you might want to reread eventually, maybe after the class, or go back to it another day during the semester and review this chapter. Because again, this is one of those chapters that makes you think, critical thinking skills, about thinking about things that you don't normally think about in your everyday life. So I will see you for chapter 12.